Hi, my name is Dana. Welcome to another episode of the Dental Hygiene Basics podcast. I am jumping on the mic randomly. I have no plan. I have a plan for where this podcast is going to go, but I just kind of got inspired randomly and I'm home alone today. So I was like, well, this is the perfect time to jump on and record a kind of random episode. I want to talk about the top mistakes I made as a dental hygiene educator. And I'm referring to mistakes I made as a formal dental hygiene educator, so working in the traditional school setting. To you, you might be thinking, what does this have to do with me, a student who's applying to dental hygiene school? Well, one, you might be a student one day who applies and then decides they want to become an educator. So it's always good to have that little bit of knowledge, maybe what someone else would do differently under your belt. But also, I think it's really good to have the perspective of what your faculty, your teachers, your instructors, your directors, what they are going through when they are teaching you to become a dental hygienist. You know, we go into this field of education because it's a passion. We like teaching and we want to help craft and form the future generation of dental hygiene students. But with that being said, unless you have a background in teaching or you've gotten a degree in teaching, most people who go on to be dental hygiene educators do not have any type of teaching experience or a degree that relates to teaching. Now, some master's programs in dental hygiene will have an educational focus, which is fantastic. So if you think you're interested in maybe teaching one day, you could look into master's programs, like a master's program in dental hygiene, and see if they have a focus on education, something that would give you the opportunity to do some teaching presentations, to work with the students, to shadow faculty, things like that, so that you have a really good idea. I didn't do any of that. So I'm going to talk about some of my biggest regrets as a dental hygiene educator and maybe what I would have done differently. And again, this will just give you a big perspective on what faculty are going through, their experiences, and maybe why there's some struggles sometimes between faculty and students. So let me just get into this a little bit. The first thing that I wish I would have done differently before I started teaching, I knew I wanted to teach whenever I was in dental hygiene school. I knew it. I was like, this is for me. This is what I'm supposed to do. So I knew I had to have a master's. And so that's what I did. I graduated dental hygiene school and I immediately started working on my master's. Well, I was called to do a master's in aging and dementia studies. When I say called, it was just a personal preference. I was drawn to it. I had two grandparents at the time who both had dementia. It was very much at the forefront of my mind. And I think it just intrigued me to know more and to understand about that process. I knew it was a master's. I knew that I could potentially use that in my career because we deal with the aging population. And I've treated so many patients with dementia, with Alzheimer's disease, vascular dementia, all different types, with Huntington's disease, some of these different types of forms that can cause dementia. And so I was really inspired to move forward with that. Looking back on it now, I don't regret doing that as my master's because I've definitely used a lot of it just in my practice and then as an educator, but I kind of wish I would have thought more about getting a degree in something to do with education. Anything, whether that be online education, instructional design, that's really hot right now. I really wish that I would have done maybe something in instructional design. Anything that would have helped me to prepare for what life was like as a teacher. As a new educator, I started pretty much like the week, 2 weeks right before the COVID shutdown happened. And when we came back, I did not know what I was doing. And I'm being thrust into these teaching positions, in the clinic, getting hands-on, having to use terms that I haven't used since dental hygiene school, like the functional shank and the terminal shank and, all of these words that if you're in hygiene school or if you're an educator, you're like, of course, we know those words. But if you haven't used those words, it's like speaking another language, right? And they say with foreign languages, if you don't speak it every day, if you're fluent in another language, you lose, I can't remember how many, I think it's like 7 words a day. Well, I had lost a lot of that vocabulary. And so I don't think a lot of students realized that I was studying just as much as they were. We were telling them, read your textbooks before class, come to class prepared. I was doing that too. I had to, or else how was I going to teach them? Now I had the benefit of already going through these courses and I really cared about my courses as I was going through them. So I really got a good baseline knowledge the first time. And so when I had to learn it the second time, it just made it easier. It was already in my subconscious. I just had to refresh it. And that was nice. But I don't think anyone realizes how much educators, especially new educators, have to study, have to prepare. they are studying just the same, if not more than you, because they have to be the ones to teach it to you. And I don't think a lot of students realize that. So if you have new educators on your team, I'm not saying that they shouldn't be prepared to, cut them some slack, but cut them some slack, right? I was so stressed. I was very blessed. The students were amazing. They were super kind. They knew I was new to this. And I was very honest with them if I didn't know something, and I would just let them know, hey, I don't know the answer to that, but let me see if I can try and find an answer to that for you. And that's another concern that we always have as new educators is we just don't know everything. We don't know how the school works. We don't know how the system works. Like, we're just getting our bearings. It's like any new job. If you've ever worked any new job, there's so much you don't understand, but suddenly you have maybe 20, 30, however many students staring at you, expecting you to have your stuff together. And that is a very, very high pressure situation. Now, some people, they do great. Like, that doesn't faze them at all. But for most people, that's a lot of pressure. And so all of the stress that you're going through as a student, just know that your teachers are going through a lot as well. So I wish I would have had some type of educational formal training, whether that be it was a master's degree, or maybe I got a certificate in instructional design or education, online teaching, I don't know, something, because that would have just really, really helped me to feel more prepared. I was blessed too to have some mentors as a dental hygiene school faculty who pointed out things, gave me great feedback, told me areas I could improve. But I was still lacking a lot of the knowledge in terms of how to create content, run a classroom, how to assess students. And thankfully, when I got to the university, when I worked at UT Health, there were a lot of great resources. They offered extra classes that you could take, and they would train you and stuff like that. So I really felt like I was starting to hit my stride as an educator in formal. But again, formal is way different than informal, which is what I do now and what I absolutely love. But I was really starting to understand how the world of education worked. So if there's anyone out there listening who's interested in a career in dental hygiene education, I would definitely consider that and think about how preparing for that ahead of time would benefit you and your students. Because if you're struggling, I hate to break it to you, they're going to be struggling too. Now, the next thing, I worked in programs, and this is not true of every program, and it is true of a lot of programs, okay? There is this kind of culture in dental hygiene school of you have to show up perfect. Your hair has to be perfect. Your nails have to be perfect. Your outfit needs to be perfect. You need to present yourself as your best self every single day because you are professional. And while I do agree with that, because that is your career, that is when you are supposed to be professional, I did kind of feel like there was this culture of almost militant. We are the boss and you are the employee, and you need to show up and do this, 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 and this. And if you don't, you're going to get written up, or you're going to get an advising, and this could be grounds for dismissal from the program. There was a lot of fear, and some programs were better than others that I worked at, but that level of fear was definitely an undercurrent. And I remember that from when I was in dental hygiene school. I remember being scared a lot. This is random, but I even remember a faculty mentioning in class one day, and I know they did not mean this to affect me and make me think about it, almost 10 years later. But they said, we were like, well, what happens if you leave some residual calculus, which is also known as tartar for my future dental hygiene school girlies? What if you leave some behind? And they said, well, if you leave it behind, the patient could sue you and you could go to jail. You could lose your license. I mean, talk about pressure, right? And while that is kind of true to an extent, there are limitations to what we can do as dental hygienists. We can't perform miracles. We do non-surgical therapy. We can't perform surgery. So yes, we have to make the right calls, get them to the right doctor to take care of the patient, do what we maybe can't do. But that stuck with me, that kind of fear. You have to be on 100% of the time, or you could get sued and go to jail, or you're not looking professional, or your career is at stake. Remember, the dental hygiene community is small. If you do something wrong, you won't get a job somewhere else. So that built a lot of fear into me and made me create this very, very type A perfectionist persona. And it didn't leave me when I left dental hygiene school. And it probably got even worse as an educator. But whenever I was working in these schools and I was the one that had to do this militant style, you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this. Sometimes it was because I truly had to be like a little dictator, right? Because I'm trying to teach you all of this stuff. I had to teach you so much in 10 weeks that if even 10 minutes of my lecture didn't go the way it was supposed to, it could blow the semester. I know people are like, that's crazy. And that's me being type A and perfect and hard on myself, wanting to make sure that the students got everything they needed to learn. But with that being said, that stress that I felt to be on and to be kind of militant, and I felt that from my mentors and my other faculty, you need to have a hard rein over these students and you need to advise them. And like, if they're not doing things right, you need to write them up. Like, it just never felt right to me. It didn't match my values. And I didn't know that at the time, truthfully. I didn't know that until I started to like go home and be sad. Like, I had to write up another student today because, they didn't submit an assignment on time. And the student's telling me, well, I had this, or I'm just struggling with school. There's so much going on. And I wanted to be a human, but I felt like I had to be a machine. And I didn't like that. And so when I went into my job at the university, I decided like I was going to come from a completely different mindset. I was not going to come from a militant mindset. I was going to come from a cheerleader, a supporter. And I'm not saying I was perfect. I made mistakes. I still got frustrated. It's hard. We're dealing with a lot of stress. There's a lot of moving parts as an educator that people don't tell you. I have to coordinate with my faculty. Please be here on time so that we can do a huddle so that I can prepare you for what the students need to know. I have to coordinate the space. I have to make sure that we're going to have enough chairs available, that we're going to have the space available, that no one else needs that space at that time. I have to coordinate the equipment that we're going to use. Who's going to give us the equipment? Do I have to go get it myself, put it on a cart and roll it up there and then roll it back at the end of the session? All of these things. And that's just 3 things. Like, as an educator, I think it's important for people to know how much they are doing to create these classes and these moments for you to help you learn. So I think some perspective is good because there's going to be times where you're really frustrated with your faculty. And I think it will be good for you to know what they are going through. And not only are they going through this kind of stuff, but also we all have external lives. And that's kind of what I wanted to get on and talk about a little bit. And it's just giving each other a little bit more grace because we don't always know what's going on. And that's what I didn't love about having to feel like I had to come down on my students, or almost like I had to treat them like they were children. You didn't submit an assignment on time, this is your punishment. And if you do it again, we'll send you to the academic committee and all this. And it's like, where are the conversations? Like, how are you doing? What do you need more help in? What do you need more support in? How can we better support you? Are you happy? Is this what you want to do? Like, these are all questions that I think we could be asking each other, asking, as a faculty to a student. As a student, maybe you don't ask the faculty directly because, there should be some boundaries, but even just, how are you today? Are you doing well? Thank you for the time you put in to like that lecture. It was really helpful. Even if you don't think everything was helpful, we can find nice things to say about each other and build each other up because that confidence means everything. That support means everything. It's what helps us to grow and continue to thrive. But I think looking at each other from a lens of not just you are my teacher, I am your student, and vice versa, knowing the perspective of each one, I think can help us to have a better dental hygiene school experience all around and hopefully improve that culture. Like I said, I did not like having to treat my adult students like they were children. Why did you come to class like, and they're like, I have car problems. Or it's like, life happens, At the end of the day, you, the student, you are the adult, but the faculty feel really responsible for you. That is the one thing I think I did right as an educator. I cared so much about my students. I still care about them, to the point where I'd go home and cry thinking about y'all sometimes because I wanted your success so bad. And if you were struggling, then I was struggling. And that was really important to me. Like, that's how I wanted to grow and be a better educator. And I really feel like when I left formal education, I was really, really getting the hang of that. And that's what sparked and motivated this whole podcast. But with that came a lot of things that I did wrong. And I wish I could go over and do them again. And I was just reflecting on that. And I guess I just wanted to bare my heart a little bit and tell students, especially if any of my former students were listening, if I was ever hard on you, it was because I loved you. I wanted you to succeed maybe more than you even wanted to succeed yourself. If I got annoyed or frustrated, maybe, yes, you did play a small part in that, but I was probably extremely stressed and I was also still learning too. I don't think we give educators enough credit for how much they deal with and how much they have to learn to be on top and prepared and ready to educate the students. So if you're listening and you have faculty maybe just give them a little hug and say thank you. And if you're interested in becoming a faculty one day, look at those teachers who you admire and love and think about their traits. And then maybe think about the teachers who are difficult and what can you still find to admire about their traits? Maybe they're not all smiley and bubbly all the time. Maybe they're really hard on you, but maybe they made you a better clinician, right? Maybe they helped you to really, truly learn a subject matter. If it weren't them, you wouldn't have just absorbed it quite as well. So it's not to say that every dental hygiene school experience will be sunshine, rainbows, smiles, but I hope that with a little bit of perspective on what educators are also going through in this experience, which also includes really not getting paid enough. We hear that across the board for educators, but it is what it is. We do this out of love, not out of money. Think through and let's try and just build a more positive culture between the two of us. Maybe this was where this podcast was supposed to go. Maybe it's not what I intended at all. I honestly have no idea. I just decided I needed to talk about it. And so that's what I did today. I'd love your feedback. What did you think? How are your relationships with your faculty? Or what do you hope your relationships with your faculty will be? Remember, whenever we're going through the application process, you can start to ask these questions. Ask, former students, current students, what are your relationships like with your faculty? Will I enjoy going there? Are the faculty helpful? If you're going through an interview process, you're looking and seeing, how do they treat each other? How do they treat me? Do I feel supported? Will they support me? I am going to be posting an episode with Billy Lunt. She is an educator in New Hampshire, and she is just a phenomenal human being. I've been thinking about our chat for weeks now. And with Billy, I just thought it was so special. She mentioned that when they interview students, that they try and find their weaknesses, not to prevent them from coming into dental hygiene school, but so that when they get there, they know what their weaknesses are and they can have a plan to help support them. I thought that was just so amazing. And, if I were to go back into formal education again, that would be the mindset that I would come from. Where are the weaknesses? Let's identify those and let's have a plan for them coming in. And maybe I'm doing that already because that's what this whole podcast is, unveiling the difficult aspects of applying and getting into and thriving and surviving in dental hygiene school. But I want you to do that hard work for yourself. Because in life, we have to be advocates for ourselves. So maybe you're looking at yourself and you're thinking, I am weak in this. Or I need help with this. I need support with this. Whether that's finances, learning disabilities, external pressures, anxiety, depression, illnesses, it could even be a disability that you think could potentially impact, whatever it may be, start thinking about that now. How are you going to support yourself? How are you going to advocate for yourself in dental hygiene school? Okay, I think that's all I need to say for today. 20 minutes of rambling. I appreciate y'all so much for listening. I broke 2,000 downloads, and that means the world to me. I am so grateful to every one of you who is listening to my show. If you ever have a question that you want answered on the podcast, please feel free to reach out to me. You can send me a DM on Instagram at Dental Hygiene Basics. You can email me at dhbasics@pm.me. You can also find all this information in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening, and I'm excited to hear the rest of your journey. Future registered dental hygienists, have a great, amazing day.